Ready to go, forgot to grab it. Flowing. Ready?
Yep.
Animal flow. We want to keep St. Pete flowing. So, animal flow is completely body weight. It's a ground-based movement program that Mike Fitch, he's the creator, through his background of gymnastics, breakdancing, hand balancing, and parkour, he created it. I know that there are a few different training styles out there that are like primal movements based and stuff. What makes animal flow different is that it is in the details of it. So I'll get into that later, but it's a form of body weight and primal movement based, but there's some things that are like specific just to animal flow that differentiates it from other forms, training programs. This is a lot, but this is just some of, how he put it together from his background in kettlebells, Olympic lifts, and corrective exercise. He likes to make it very clear, Mike Fitch, that he wasn't the first to create it. He just put it together in a system that's easy to coach and easy for people to pick up and be able to learn it and do the movements, And I really like this quote. His goal was to use these animal movements to improve the function and communication of the human animal. So I thought that was a really good, I liked it. And it is based on, like I said, all of his years of his prior knowledge, training, so it is backed in science. It's not just something that's, you know what I mean? It's backed. It's not just made up. There are some studies that I actually have linked at the end in case we, want to review them, if you want to review them on your own later. But some of them and some of the findings were each of these studies use animal flow specific as the modality. So the first one, novel quadrupedal movement, basically just quadrupedal movement is being on your hands and feet. So your hands are on the ground as well, being in the quadruped position. And these studies just found how it does actually increase range of motion, stability, flexibility, some strength, some muscular endurance. So it is a multifaceted form of moving and training style. The second one here, it actually does reduce back pain. I think they tested esports players, so they're gamers who are on their computers all the time, and they put them through I don't remember if this study was 5 weeks or not 16 weeks. I think a 5-week study. They were doing animal flow like twice a week, I believe, and maybe 1 or 2 homework sessions on their own. And at the end of the study, the test group that was doing animal flow actually had reduced back pain compared to the control group that wasn't doing it. No, just 2. And then the last one I found interesting was because it trains coordination as well, because you're on your feet, it's a lot of contralateral movement. And so this last study talked about how it can help with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And because the study of crawling motions and crawling patterns, that's how we learn as humans when we're children, and how that plays a role in our cognitive abilities. So they did this study on quadrupedal movement and how it can increase cognition. So I thought that was really interesting given some of our clients. So now to some of the science. Mike's main background is in NASM. Well, I shouldn't say main, but his background is in NASM. So according to them and how he created animal flow, it's based on the 4 muscular subsystems: the deep longitudinal, anterior oblique, posterior oblique, and the lateral subsystems, and how they connect with the anterior and posterior chains. So the deep longitudinal subsystem stabilizes the body basically from the ground up. So that's the erector spinae, the fascia in our back, across our mid and low back, sacrotuberous ligament, and our hamstrings, right? How they work together and basically our reaction forces coming, from the ground, and how our body produces it and then stabilizes us. The anterior oblique, obliques, adductors, our core, the rectus abdominis, pec major, and serratus anterior, how that creates stability through our hips and our spines, and then opposes the posterior oblique sling because it decelerates the spinal extension and rotation that the posterior chain causes. The posterior, our glutes, again, the fascia within our back, covering our muscles, our opposite lats, and then our lower traps. So this is opposing the flexion and the rotation that the anterior side, anterior oblique system wants to create, and this is how we're actually able to pull and rotate. And the lateral subsystem, the last one. This stabilizes the pelvis and is really in gait and single leg movements, which there's a lot of in animal flow. Like I said, there's a lot of contralateral, and some of the activations are just single limb lifts. So you're getting work through animal flow. You're getting a lot of work in all planes of motion, and you'll see how coming up. So that's the muscular subsystems. Now the fascia, that's a part of it. Thomas Myers, he has this book, Anatomy Trains, and he identifies the fascia within our body and how they run in the networks. And it actually, you'll see on the next slide how it lines up, no surprise, with the muscular subsystems, with the front line, the back line, the lateral lines, and then the deep front line. And fascia is clearly all over our whole body. This one just shows how they line up with the anterior and posterior chains and the oblique slings and the lateral subsystems. So like I said, you have the muscular subsystems and then the fascial lines that line up and work together to be able to produce our movement. So all of that, how that relates to animal flow is that's kind of, some background and basis on what Mike Fitch used to create and put together animal flow. And as you can see in some of these examples on the right, those are two of the positions that are working the whole frontal chain, right? Static beast, that's something that we kind of use here in the beginning of our bear crawls, right? Front kick through, one of my favorite moves, but that's also using it, and there are regressions to these as well, but with bringing that leg through, you can see how you're in a whole flexed position, right? So you're working the whole anterior chain and the fascia, strengthening those muscles and learning how to stabilize your body, the front of your body. More examples of posterior chain being worked with the wave unload and the static crab. Static crab is a really good position to work on retraction of the scapula, because that's one of the starting points. That's a base position in animal flow. And wave unload is really good mobility throughout the spine. That's one that I personally like to do in a lot of my own warm-ups. These are two different movements. So I have some slides coming up that shows the different components of animal flow. So they'll be in those. These are just some examples of just the level 1 movements. There are actually 3 levels to animal flow, so this is just covering some of the level 1 stuff. And then the side kick through, and like I said earlier, the contralateral limb lifts. Like I said, a lot of contralateral work within animal flow, so you're getting the whole oblique sling, working the opposite lat in the obliques to help stabilize your body. And then some more with the front step, which can kind of be similar to like the world's greatest stretch, but just different, And again, in there's some details that I'll cover whenever we get to it and go over it. And then the lateral subsystem. Under switch is one of the transitions actually, and that doing that movement right and taking your time with it, you will really feel your obliques in that one and how difficult it is to learn to control yourself throughout the movement, not just getting from position to position, but throughout transitions. It's how do I control it each way through the movement so that I can honestly stop on a dime at any point, right? So, and then lateral ape 3, that's a really good one. It works your adductors, works your glute med, and your mobility all at the same time. So, that being said, some of the benefits for bringing it here, one, it brings body...
Just trying to figure Because I was so related to like animal flow, my brain.
Oh, sorry. That was a bad transition.
No, it's just me.
So some of the benefits for wanting to bring in here is body awareness, since that is, one of the basis for training and having clients. As I said before, all the balance and coordination and some of the cognitive benefits for some of our certain clients, I think could benefit from it. It is full body, and that's what we train and encourage here. So you're going to get max benefit out of it. I think it will fit in seamlessly to how how we already program here. In addition, wrist and mobility strengthening, because I know some of our clients do have some wrist problems, and so adding in some of these, it can be, or not can be, it is a lot on the wrists because you're on them for longer periods of time, but that's actually one of the components that I'm going to get to in a minute is the wrist mobilizations before you do every flow. You should be working that, and over time, your wrists are going to get more mobile and stronger. There are regressions as well, and it gives some variation to the programming, and it's functional. Like I said, it's just body weight, so it's not like anything is added here, and I think it would fit perfect in this space, and it's a ton of fun. So I think that clients would love it, especially some of the ones that like to do yoga already. I think that this is a great alternative, and from my own personal experience, I think, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but after having tried yoga a few times and animal flow, I think I get a lot more out of animal flow, and I personally think it's a lot more fun. I think it trains a lot more mobility than yoga does comparing the two. So I think you get more bang for your buck. And this is some of the exercises that just since my time of being here, that as I've seen, that I've learned from you guys, my mind immediately would relate it to animal flow. One of the very first ones was the all fours to tabletop. The first time I saw you guys do that and go over, my mind wanted to do the reverse. I wanted to bring my leg under because that's part of the under switch in the animal flow. So there are some similarities, things that we already do. Like we already have clients go into a deep squat. A deep ape is a deep squat, only that it gets a little bit more protraction of the shoulders, and then you can open up from that position and really work on stability, coming up on the ankles and working your glute med as well. So we're gonna get to practice and feel all of it in a few minutes, but these are some of the ones. And tabletop to reach, actually. I coached somebody that this morning, and I wanted to teach it like crab reach, which I did because they're similar already, but I held back just until like we're all on the same page. But there are some similarities that my mind immediately like drew to, that I'm like, oh, this, we could, kind of seamlessly transition how we're coaching it now to, if we start incorporating it. So back to the 6 components. The first one is wrist mobilization. So this is to prepare the hands and the wrist, as I said. And a lot of that too are just standard wrist mobility stuff that we do here, on all 4, rocking forward, rocking backwards, changing the hand placement. So that one's not really animal flow specific, but I do have a few different ones to show you today that I don't think that you guys have seen. And then there's activations. That is the opposite. There's Tootsie's 2 cents. Activations are a lot of the limb lifts. So that can be used to get the body warm, get it ready for the movements that we're about to do. Being in a beast position, lifting one limb at a time, and that's really bringing also the body awareness and some control of people who, might be used to only doing a full movement, but like really breaking it down and teaching them how to only move one joint at a time. Form specific stretches, these are the ones where you are going to get more mobility and a little more flexibility out of it, but you're also going to have to be able to get really strong throughout. It's a lot of shoulder mobility as well, which is great, and I think that they feel amazing for the most part. Traveling forms, those are mainly I mean, exactly what they are. Those are the locomotive movements. So the ABCs of animal flow are ape, beast, and crab. And so those for level 1, those are going to be your traveling forms. There's traveling beast, traveling crab, forward and backwards. Beast actually also has a lateral traveling as well, and then a lateral traveling ape, and then a forward traveling frog, forward traveling ape. So, and then switches and transitions. These are the majority of the flow in what you see because it's piecing all of those together. And what's great about these is that you can do them just on their own as a drill to work on it, to practice it, or you can put it in a flow, you know. It doesn't have to be, flows are typically about 90-ish seconds, give or take. You know, there's no like set time or anything. You can free flow. You can, what I did this morning to show Christian, that was a free flow. I just made that up on the spot. Yeah.
So this is more like, it almost becomes more of an art.
Yeah, kind of. And that's why part of such of the detail and what makes it different than other primal movements is the details are there to make it stylish and that make it like intriguing to watch, you know. So that's some of the differences. A few weeks ago, when I was practicing that rotating ape, Heather said, why can't you just turn your hands or put your hands in a different way? Well, that hand placement was specific to animal flow. You know what I mean? Like that was one of the small details. And obviously there are regressions if people don't have the mobility or strength to get into certain positions. But the goal to try to get your hands a certain way or to turn a whole 180 degrees, like that stuff is some of the style details of animal flow and what makes it specific. So, and I think a lot of fun. So, here's where we said the activations, like I said, those are our limb lifts from starting in beast and crab. Form specific stretches, those are the loaded beast, which that's one that we already do, you know, basically getting into child's pose, but with your knees slightly off the ground. Loaded beast to unloading that, beast reach, crab reach, which is our tabletop reach, our wave unload, our ape reach, scorpion reach. Scorpion reach is, you know, similar to what we do on the ground prone scorpions, only more advanced because you're up in the air, right? We're not just staying lying on our stomachs. The traveling forms, as I kind of went over earlier, the lateral traveling ape, you can see there are 3 versions. So there's a low hip, a high hip, and then a reaching. And so each of them have different nuances and different challenges to them that I think make them a lot of fun. And then 2 forward traveling ape and traveling frog, which are similar, but again have some small minor detail changes that you wouldn't really see if you're not paying attention, if you don't know that that's what you're looking for, what you're supposed to be doing. So it just adds some variation. And then switches and transitions are putting these form-specific stretches together, or the traveling forms, and that's how you're piecing it together. That's what's making it a flow. So there, as you can see, there's more of those compared to other ones. So these are all just the level 1 ones. Like I said, there's levels 2 and 3, but I haven't taken those workshops yet, so I'm just at level 1. And there's also specific call-out language to animal flow. So it goes direction, limb, command. So it's always going to be, like this example, left leg, side, kick through. So that's telling you whatever leg I'm calling, that's the leg that's going to be moving, right? And if I say right arm, crab reach, my right arm's going to be the one actually performing the reach. Okay, so that's something that's also very specific. And even how you piece it together with the flows. I didn't get into super detail with the language, but this is the general, you know, kind of what you needed to know to be able to put it together. So now, any questions? Because now we get to learn them and then we get to flow. So this on these, so I kind of broke this up in the left side and the right side. It is the same flow. What you see on the right side is just how you write it in animal flow terms and animal flow language. So it's the same thing. I only, this like shorthand version, so to say, on the right side, that is just to the opposite side. So instead of right leg, it's left leg, or vice versa, whatever it is.
So like crab, left leg, under switch, right leg strike, or
Side kick through.
okay, there you go. Okay, I see.
Yeah, and so the dashes actually represent where you would say to or into, because it's also, so that's what makes it a flow, right? So if I go left leg under switch into right leg side kick through, I'm not under switching back into that beast position, back into something like I'm just fluid with it. That's how I know to be fluid versus more mechanical. So whenever you learn the things, a lot of people see the flows and they're like, oh my gosh, I could never do that or whatever. But you learn it, and how I'm going to teach you guys today, teach you each individual move first so it's more mechanical, but then you piece it together, and then, then you're able to make it fluid and make it an actual flow. So that's what we get to do. Yeah,
Ready for it?
let's do it.
Okay, first,
Yeah.